Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gov't. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group. We're located in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today, my friends, we've got some Trump Mar-a-Lago saga news to attend to. And as usual, let's get our bearings straight by going over to the mind map. And you can see we've got three whopper segments that we're going to get into today. First and foremost, I mean, my goodness, you must have seen all of the hubbub about this photograph that was spreading all over the interwebs. You see it right here. We are going to take a deep dive look at this photograph and really sort of unpack it, because it's sort of like the FBI had a photo shoot over there at Mar-a-Lago after they got done trying on Melania's underwear. They went over there and they sort of dumped out boxes all over the floor at Mar-a-Lago. And so we're going to unpack all of that. You can see, look at this. We've got 36 pages of the response that came out from U.S. prosecutors. We're going to go through all 36 pages of those in detail, along with their 18-page exhibit that is also the document that actually contains the photograph, the FBI sort of Playboy shoot that they took over there out at Mar-a-Lago after their little, foray into Melania land. But anyways, we've got that. We're going to check out Donald Trump's response. And then I came across this guy, pretty interesting. He is a former DOJ attorney, and he was talking about the FBI and the DOJ and some of the issues that sort of he sees with oversight and why, there's sort of strong opposition to the appointment of a special master, and their sort of new tactics of dumping out, I guess, national security secrets into the public court docket is indicative of them being a little bit scared. Yeah, we've got this photo coming in. This one, look at this one, beautiful. Yeah, that's a close up of the that's a close up of the photo. So we're going to get into it and more. You can see it's going to be some fun. Then we got this interesting clip from Ann Coulter that I couldn't let just, scoot on by. I know she's largely irrelevant, right? I know, but it's still something we got to talk about, because she's sort of carving out a lane in the anti-Trump category, right? She's sort of, nestling herself in this, not Trump category like she has done before. But she's very angry about the wall, and so we're going to listen to her. She's got a new Substack out, and so she came out, and Ann said, Donald Trump is done. Done. Don't even think about it, all right? He's just not available. He's not even in contention. Guys like Glenn Youngkin are going to come out, and they're going to reshape the Republican Party. So we're going to go through that. It's about a 1.5 minute clip. We'll take a look at that. We'll look at some of the polls that are out. We'll ask ourselves, is Ann Coulter right about some of these things? We'll ask ourselves. And then we've got this very interesting clip from Steve Doocey over on Fox News, along with Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota. And yeah, and Fox News is also sort of saying something similar to Ann Coulter. Like, this is unprecedented. You've got this guy, Steve Doocey, who is, out there. This is unprecedented, Kristi. What are we going to do about this? And so we're going to go, is Fox turning on Trump? Yeah, they have a long time ago, but we'll unpack all of that. So we'll jump into that. And then lastly, boy, oh boy, oh boy. I thought I was, well, here. Our final segment is going to be the White House. They're attacking MAGA Republicans all over the place. Biden last night was out in front of, some group of Democrats, and he was taunting Republicans. He was saying, you MAGA Republicans, if you think you can take me on with your firearms, with your assault rifles, you got another thing coming, buddy boy, because Joe Biden thinks he's Tom Cruise in F15s, and he is sort of taunting Republicans to try to take him on, which is a weird thing for a unifying president. So we'll unpack that. And then we had Karine Jean Pierre. She was in front of the media today, as usual, and she got some pretty good questions about this new line of questioning coming out of the White House, in particular, sort of screaming about the MAGA Republicans, semi-fascist, threats to American democracy, and on and on and on. Now officially coming out of the president's mouth. He's posting it on Twitter. The media has several questions. We've got this woman asking if Biden's made any progress on dealing with this extremism. We've got this guy saying, how do you differentiate between the good Republicans and the bad Republicans? Like, which Republicans can sit at the front of the bus? Which Republicans can sit at the back of the bus? It's a good question. And, that is being asked over from Karine Jean Pierre, and we'll see how she answers that. And then we've got this final clip about the unifying president. Is Joe Biden going to be unifying America? I mean, that was part of his speech when he was inaugurated. And we're going to ask ourselves whether any of that has come true. And so, as you can see, boy, oh boy, we've got just a lot to get to. Look at all this stuff. Just a whole bunch of meat and potatoes here today. And if you want to be a part of the program, the place to do that is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We've got an amazing community over there. They just shared that Ashley Biden photograph from C. Reed. Shout out to C. Reed. We have here, who is this? Oh, Paul Minot. He says, waiting for Gov't is a play, isn't it? Yeah, I know. Late again. Ugh. 2 days in a row. I hate that. But, you know, sometimes you just got technical problems. What can you do about it? And so they're chatting away over there. JC the Music Man is there along with several others who are chatting. B-Spec, my scroll wheel is loading right now. But you can also chat with our community over on YouTube. Shout out to Curtis Bartle. H. Bailey is in the house. Shout outs to Playin' Hooky, Ronnie Cole, Vienticus Prime, who are modding down the fort as usual for us. We've got our law firm, of course. I am a criminal defense lawyer at a law firm in Scottsdale. Was just in there today, met with the team. Amazing group of people, extremely passionate about helping good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope, not only in their cases, but beyond that in their lives. We offer free case evaluations. We have an amazing team of people who are just dedicated to upholding that presumption of innocence, making sure the government and their presumption, their burden of proof is maintained. And we're grateful for your support and your referrals. 480-787-0394. All right, and so we are going to reorient ourselves on the mind map before we dive into this, because we've got a little bit of heavy lifting to do. You can see, let me make sure I've got all this sort of queued up. We've got the attachment here, and then we've got the full motion that we're going to actually read through. And so without any further ado, we can get into it. The FBI just released through the DOJ a photo of the raid at Trump's private residence in Mar-a-Lago. And it's a very interesting photo. Some say it might be a little bit gratuitous given the highly sensitive and secret nature of what we're dealing with here, but it certainly looks staged to me. We're going to go through it in detail. You can see the photograph was here attached to an exhibit, which is 18 pages long. We're going to read through the whole thing. It's a bunch of letters back and forth, but this is the photograph, and we will come back to this and sort of analyze it as a part of that second exhibit. But you can see here, pretty gratuitous. I mean, they even included the Time magazine photograph right there in the box. And we've got just a whole slew of questions about this photograph. And so we'll save it for, when we get there. But first, let's start off and just get our bearings straight. What are we talking about? We typically like to go over to the court docket and see what they have for us. And you can see on August 30th, this was a late night filing. This was the response to the motion for judicial oversight and additional relief. Remember, we had two parallel cases that were being processed here. The actual search warrant case, which is basically done. That's what the FBI submitted to Judge Reinhart. And they said, hey, we need to go and investigate this. And he said, yeah, whatever you need. That's pretty much done. This is a separate case that we're talking about here on this docket. This docket was where Donald Trump filed a suit, essentially, right? He filed a complaint, and he said, we need the appointment of a special master because what they are doing here in investigating or sort of rummaging through my documents is illegal. So they posted this, filed a complaint, and this is the government responding to it now. So they asked for more time and for more pages, not more time, but they actually asked for more pages. And we talked all about that yesterday. The judge set some pretty hard deadlines in the scheduling order. You can see some of these. A hearing is scheduled for September 1st at 1 p.m. on these motions. So what we're about to read, they're going to argue all of this on September 1st. You see this last deadline on or before August 30th, defendant, meaning the U.S. government, they're the people being sued here or complained about, they file a response and a motion due by the end of August 30th. That happened. Boom. Then we're going to see actual oral arguments about this tomorrow. So let's go through the summary, the actual motion submitted by the government. 36-page motion submitted here. Donald Trump, of course, versus the United States of America. He already submitted his complaint saying that they need a special master and they should return his confidential documents and 4 basic complaints. And the government is now responding. You see it. The United States response to the motion from Trump for judicial oversight and for that additional relief. Remember, he wanted a better inventory of the property. He wanted any outstanding property returned back over to him, and he wanted sort of certain protections put in place with the appointment of a special master. So the government is saying, we don't think any of that is appropriate at all. They write here on August 22nd, 14 days after the DOJ already searched his private house, Trump then filed a motion. 14 days later. They say in his motion, Trump requested, among other things, a special master be appointed and that property be returned. And then the following day, the court ordered Trump to file a supplemental brief. They did. And now they're asking us for our response. And so here we have it. We file our public response to the motion and their request for a special master. They say, Judge, the legal issues presented here and the relief requested by Trump and his team, they're pretty narrow. And they're notwithstanding the wide-ranging, meritless accusations leveled against the government in their motion. They say Trump filing, in them, he presents three issues. Number one, whether he's entitled to return of the property. So can what the FBI sees, can all of that come back? Number two, injunctive relief, whether you can say stop rummaging through my documents. Remember, they wanted to say stop rummaging through them until you can appoint a special master. And then number three, appoint a special master. We've got a footnote here. They say, okay, those are those three things that they wanted, but they say, Trump, I remember there being four. They say Trump also sought a more detailed receipt of the property. That's the property receipt. And so they say, well, the court ordered the government to file under seal a more detailed receipt for the property, and the government today did file that under seal, the more detailed receipt. They say, although the receipt of the property was already provided to Trump at the time of the search, they say that's sufficient. Given the extraordinary circumstances, they say, we're okay with unsealing a more detailed receipt and providing it immediately to Trump, right? And we saw the receipt that they gave the first time around. We looked at it in depth here. A21, box A31 containing classified material, box A37, right? There was nothing in there. And so Trump said, I want an inventory, right? It's like you can't just come in and say, well, we seized your whole bedroom. Here's a receipt. One bedroom, one kitchen, one bathroom, one closet, I don't know what room that is. Weird stuff going on in that room, I don't know, but it's on there. We just took the whole thing. You say, can I get a little more detail about what you took out of the room there? Because I'm looking for indicia of criminality. What do you got for me? So they say, okay, yeah, you're right. We actually were in compliance with the law. We didn't need to give more details, but because of the extraordinary nature, we've decided to do that. Very generous of them. They say not only does Trump lack standing, which we'll talk about, to raise these claims, it's always standing, right? He had his home invaded by the FBI. He got no standing to even complain about it. No claims at this juncture, but even if claims were properly raised, if he did have standing, he says he's still not entitled to the relief that he wants. And they say, Judge, let me summarize this argument for you here. They say Trump and his motion to appoint a special master and to enjoin the review, to stop looking at the materials and to review and return the documents fails for multiple independent reasons. They write, as an initial matter, Trump lacks standing to seek judicial relief or oversight as to presidential records because those records do not belong to him, is what they say. Now, this point is the entire question, is it not? Aren't we talking about this entirely? He says they are his records. He says they're not confidential. They're presidential records. There's no crime. So how can there be any obstruction? And so he's 3 for 3, not guilty. And they're saying, as a matter of fact, the records do not belong to him. All right, well, let's see what their argument is. I mean, that's what we're litigating over, isn't it? But that's not what this motion is about. This motion is about appointing a special master and the return of documents and these types of things. But they say he doesn't even have the ability to bring this argument. Why? Because of no standing. Why? Because the documents don't belong to him. But we're not there yet. We have to litigate that issue. It hasn't been litigated yet. So they're sort of thinking past the sale. The Presidential Records Act makes clear that the United States has complete ownership or possession or control of them. Furthermore, this court lacks jurisdiction to adjudicate the plaintiff's Fourth Amendment challenges and the validity of the search warrant. For these reasons and others, they say Trump has no basis for this court to grant any relief. They say he's not likely to succeed on the merit. He's going to suffer no injury, absent an injunction, let alone irreparable injury, and the harms to the government and the public would far outweigh any benefit to the plaintiff. So we see sort of injunction language being used as variables, as factors. They say, Your Honor, even if the court here, you, had jurisdiction to entertain Trump's claims, they say appointment of a special master is unnecessary. We don't need one. And it's also going to harm us if you do that. They say also national security interests, because you can't ever have an argument without that. Confidential, democracy ending, podiums being stolen out of the Capitol building, national security, there it is. Appointment of a special master, they say, is disfavored in a case like this. In any event, the government's filter team has already completed its work of desegregating any seized materials and anything that's potentially subject to attorney-client privilege. So we don't need your third party to come in and monitor any of this. We already took care of it. You can trust us. Everything went by the book. We have a filter team. We call it a filter team, which means that they are very honest and integrous. They say the government's investigative team has already reviewed all the remaining materials, including any that are potentially subject to executive privilege claims. Appointment of a special master to review the materials potentially subject to claims of executive privilege would be particularly inappropriate because the Supreme Court binding precedent forecloses Trump's argument that review of these materials made by personnel within the branch raises any privilege concerns. They say, furthermore, appointment of a special master would impede the government's ongoing criminal investigation. Ugh! And if the special master were tasked with reviewing classified documents, it would also impede the intelligence community from conducting an ongoing review of the national security risk and the improper storage of the highly sensitive materials. And they say, lastly, this case does not involve any type of circumstances that have warranted the appointment of a special master to review materials subject to attorney-client privilege. And they say, well, you know, there's no precedent for this. So, Judge, we haven't found anything where an analogous case exists that would justify the appointment of a special master here. And you go, well, that's interesting. Yeah, because you shattered precedent by criminally prosecuting your political enemies in America. So that's why you didn't find any analogous case law. They say factual background here. Now, this is pretty interesting. We're getting a lot of meat and potatoes on this. Remember how quiet they were previously? Remember how much of a fight they put up to not disclose the affidavit? Oh, national security issues. Oh, and we're impeding our investigation. And this could also disclose a framework for other presidents that we're investigating who also had their homes raided to know what we are doing. Well, now suddenly we get 36 pages of a big mouthful. They're telling all sorts of stuff here. Let's see what the factual background looks like. They say, mindful that the court ruling on the present motion is not the same court that authorized a search warrant, right? It's a separate issue. The government provides below a detailed recitation of the facts, many of which are provided to correct the incomplete and inaccurate narratives set forth in plaintiff's filings. Oh, great. So these are going to be like, it's like Twitter and Truth Social almost playing out in the court of law now. All right, let's see what happens here. We're on page 4. We've got a lot of work to do. NARA, they say, this is their argument. And this is their summation of the facts. They say NARA, the National Archives. They say, upon observing that it was missing presidential records from the Trump administration, they attempted to obtain those records voluntarily from his representatives. And they tell us, you know, Judge, we worked really hard on this. Throughout 2021, the National Archives of National Organization of Librarians had ongoing communications with Trump and his team because they thought that they were missing records. You see all these links, archives.gov, a wall letter, right? There were letters going back and forth, you know, all over the place. Somebody said in that letter, we talked about it. This was that very angry introductory phrase that you can use if you want to sort of call somebody a jerk without actually calling them a jerk. You use phrases like this. As you no doubt are aware, NARA had ongoing communications with Trump's representatives. Right? It's kind of like calling somebody an idiot or a loser. Hey, idiot. As you obviously know. It says these communications ultimately resulted in the provision of 15 boxes from Trump to NARA in January 2022. Wow. So again, that seems like compliance. They say we got some stuff that we need. He gives it over to them. Happens actually relatively quickly. In January 2022. So then we get more letters. They say when producing these boxes, Trump never asserted executive privilege over any documents or said that they were declassified. So he didn't invoke that. So he didn't say, you know, he didn't use the magic words. And so that gives him justification to raid his house. NARA asked representatives of the former president, as required by the Presidential Records Act, to continue to search for any records that had not been returned. So then paragraph B, they say, observing that 15 boxes contain these highly classified documents, NARA sent a referral over to the DOJ. Okay, so librarian is calling Trump and his people, you've got overdue library books. No, we don't. Yes, we do. Those are our library books. They say, no, they're not. They're ours. There are presidential records, or they are declassified. They don't belong to you. You think they do? Come take a look. Okay, we're giving you those boxes back. The others are not yours. We're done with you. They say in its initial review within those boxes, NARA identified information marked as classified national security information up to top secret levels. And after that happened, NARA said, he has even more overdue library books than we thought. So NARA sent a referral over to the DOJ. They say a preliminary review of the 15 boxes say that they contain, now listen, they contain newspapers, magazines, printed news articles, photos, miscellaneous printouts, notes, presidential correspondence, personal and post-presidential records, and a lot of classified records. Okay, in the letter, this is a quote. Of most concern was the fact that they were unfolded, intermixed with other records, and otherwise improperly identified. Oh, so that's a pretty interesting description of some of the boxes they picked up. Now, would you imagine that the boxes they picked up would match the boxes that they recently picked up? These were boxes that they got back in January of this year. February 9th was the date of the letter that went out. They said, we got all these boxes full of intermingled things. Well, when you take a look at the photograph that they say they took, that was, I guess, a staged photo, which we'll get to in a minute, kind of doesn't really look like that, does it? Like, this is the photograph that we're looking at. And this mostly looks like government documents. In this box, there's a box of, cover magazines, Time magazine and others, I'm sure, just magazine covers in frames. So this doesn't match this description of newspapers, magazines, printouts, intermixed with classified records. It just doesn't match, right? The box doesn't look the same. Now, that might be because it's a different box. They're organizing them differently or whatever, but it's just not the same. That's an inconsistency there. This looks like they just dumped it out all over the floor. Anyways, we're going to come back to that. So as this continues, it says, the NARA referral was made on two bases. One, evidence of classified records had been stored at the premises until January. And two, evidence of presidential records that had been torn up. I think what they mean is sort of torn up, like it's very illegal to delete or to tear up documents, sort of like when Nancy Pelosi tore up the president's speech. Oh yeah, nothing happened. So torn up. Okay, related to the second concern, NARA referral included a citation to the U.S. Code. Chief Librarian Deborah Steedlewall was not happy when Donald Trump said, well, you have a big job over there. What kind of building are you working in? She didn't like that at all. So when she sent a letter, she said, are you familiar with the U.S. Code? Could be criminal. Paragraph C, as they continue to recite the facts, they say Trump delayed the FBI's access to the boxes. So they made an attempt to get him. He gave a bunch of them back. Then they said, we found stuff that we didn't like, and we think you have more library books. So then they send it over to the DOJ, and FBI now is being delayed access. 15 boxes. Upon learning the review, DOJ sought access to the 15 boxes so the FBI could examine them. DOJ followed the steps outlined in the law, but then they say, on April 12th, 2022, NARA told President Trump's counsel that it intended to provide the FBI with the records the following week, the week of April 18th. That access was not provided then because a representative of former Trump requested an extension. The acting archivist, who I think is Steedlewall, on April 29th, DOJ advised counsel, they said the following. They said, hey, Trump, these library books are important national security interests in the FBI, and they have to get access to these books. According to NARA, among the materials in the boxes are over 100 documents with classified markings. More than 700 pages. Some of these include special access program levels of material, and all of this is necessary for our ongoing criminal investigation, and we have to conduct an assessment of all the damage. Accordingly, we seek immediate access to these materials so that we can continue to do this within the executive branch. Goes over to Trump's lawyers, like, oh gosh, the library again? God, we already told him there are books. Leave us alone. On that same day, the DOJ sent this correspondence. Counsel for President Trump requested an additional extension before the materials were presented to the FBI and stated if there was not another extension granted, that this letter should be construed, here you go, as a protective assertion of executive privilege made by counsel for the former president. I thought they just said that they didn't have any executive privilege assertions that were being made. Did they just say that? Here, when producing the 15 boxes, the former president never asserted executive privilege over any of the documents. Okay. And so you scroll back down here and they say, if you want to come and get these boxes, I want you to take a look at this letter that Trump's lawyer sent over to them. And I want you to construe this as a protective assertion of executive privilege. It's in the same motion. What are they talking about? Okay, so it's in the letter. He says, yeah, executive privilege over anything that happens here. Okay. In its May 10th response, NARA rejected both of counsel's requests. First, NARA noted that significant time, 4 weeks, had elapsed since NARA first informed counsel of its intent to provide the documents. They said, your books were due back in June, and it's July. And we have other people who need those books, man. We got to let them read. Second, NARA stated that he could not assert executive privilege to prevent others within the executive branch for reviewing the documents. They said it's not even a close decision, is what NARA said. And Trump doesn't care what NARA said. NARA rejected on the same basis counsel's protective assertion of privilege. It's his argument. Accordingly, NARA informed counsel that it would provide the FBI access to the records beginning as early as Thursday, May 12th. Although the former president could have taken legal action prior to May 12th in an attempt to block the FBI's access, he did not do so. Yeah, it's weird because Trump, it's weird. Hard to have foresight for unprecedented action by an insane political party. Probably didn't think his house was going to get raided because it's an insane thing to do, but they did it. They continue on detailing the facts for us in their version of this. They say, D, the FBI's review of the boxes highlighted the national security implications of their improper storage. Yeah. Okay, let's see. It says between May 16 and 18, 2022, after finally, they use that word, after finally obtaining access to the boxes, FBI agents conducted a preliminary review of the documents and identified documents with classification markings in 14 of 15 boxes. Now, this point's been made, but okay, classification marking, is it still classified? I mean, it's marked classified, right? But does that mean it is still classified? Do they stamp it declassified? Does somebody come in there and rip those cover sheets off? What do they do with them? Do they post them somewhere? What happens? I don't know. It says a preliminary review revealed the following. 184 unique documents bearing classification markings, 67 documents marked confidential, 92 secret, 25 top secret. FBI agents observed markings reflecting that the documents were subject to sensitive compartments and dissemination controls used to restrict access in the interest of national security. Got it. And paragraph E, it says, after obtaining evidence indicating that additional classified records remained on the premises, DOJ initially sought their return through a grand jury subpoena. Right? They say, okay, well, through its investigation, paragraph 3, the FBI developed evidence indicating that even after the 15, footnote 3, even after the 15 boxes were provided to NARA, dozens of additional boxes remained at Trump's residence. They say here in other parts of the public filing, the government refers to evidence developed in its investigation in order to inform the court of the relevant facts. Of necessity, however, the government cannot publicly describe the sources of the evidence, particularly while the investigation remains ongoing. As Judge Reiner concluded, revealing this type of information could impede the ongoing investigation through obstruction of justice and witness intimidation or retaliation. They're treating him like he's the mob boss. They say the former president disclosed the subpoena and a subpoena for video footage at the premises in his filing. Thereafter, August 29th, Judge Howell authorized the government to disclose. So the grand jury subpoena is drafted. They say Trump's lawyers accepted service. Subpoena was directed to the custodian of records for any and all documents in the custody of Donald Trump bearing classification markings. DOJ also sent Trump's lawyers a letter and wanted a sworn certification that all documents and all records were responsive, right? So basically they're saying, listen, we're sending somebody over to get your library books, all right? And when they take them, we're going to make you sign this little document that says that you've given us all your library books and that you don't have any other library books left. And if we find out that you did have library books, we have this document where you're swearing under penalty of perjury, whatever, that you'd returned them all, and you didn't. And guess what? If you lie to us, then we're going to charge you for a crime with a crime as a result of that lie, right? You're sort of making an agreement with us. Now, that sort of begs the question, of course, what constitutes a breach of that? Do they have to, they're going to say all of those books are ours. Trump says, no, they're not. I've given you everything that I have determined is yours to have, and I have kept the rest of it. So how do you bifurcate that? How do you split that through? Well, what is required is judicial oversight over that, right? This is the same point that Amy Berman made in her Clinton sock drawer case, saying that it is basically non-justiciable. How do you have a judge mediate these decisions and basically override the decision-making power and authority of the president? In the Clinton case, she said, that's insane. You can't do that. But now it's suddenly totally reasonable. They say the letter further stated that if no responsive documents existed, the custodian should provide a sworn certification to that effect. Subpoena return date, May 24th. Counsel sought an extension for complying. After initially denying the request, the government offered counsel an extension until June 7th. Counsel for President Trump contacted DOJ evening June 2nd and requested the FBI agents meet him the following day to pick up the documents. They're giving over more documents. F. In response to the subpoena, Trump's lawyers provided a limited number of documents accompanied by a certification that all documents were provided, okay? So now when they give the library books back, they sign the document. We've given you all of our books, and they say, no, you haven't. Okay, that's the obstruction. On June 3rd, 3 FBI agents and DOJ attorneys, they arrived on premises to accept the materials. In addition to counsel for Trump, another individual was also present, as well as the custodian of records for Trump's post-presidential office. When producing the documents, neither counsel nor the custodian asserted that these were declassified or that they had any executive privilege. Okay, that's fine. But the letter that came from Evan Corcoran prior to that said, basically, any denial that you hear from us moving forward is an assertion of executive privilege. We just read it. They put it in this motion. They said he wrote that in his letter. And now they're saying that doesn't continue forward. Instead, counsel handled them in a manner that suggested counsel believed the documents were classified. The production included a single red-weld envelope, double wrapped in tape containing documents. The individual present as a custodian produced and signed a certification letter, which stated in part the following. This is the custodian. He says, based upon the information that's been provided to me, I'm authorized to certify on behalf of Donald Trump's office the following. A diligent search was conducted of all the boxes that were moved from the White House to Florida. This search was conducted after receipt of the subpoena in order to locate any and all documents that are responsive of the subpoena. And any and all responsive documents accompany this certification, right? I've given you everything I've got. All the books are here. And D, no copy, written notation, or reproduction of any kind was retained as to any responsive document. I swear or affirm that the above statements are true and correct to the best of my knowledge. Take a look at attachment E. And they say, according to the plaintiff's filing, the former president had determined that the search for the materials should be conducted. So we take a look at that actual exhibit. So E4, if we jump over here, let's see if we can pull this one up here. They've got exhibits E and let's see here. This is the letter from NARA. Yep. Deborah Steidelwall, the United States librarian. This is the subpoena that came out. Says you must bring with you all the following documents. May 24th. There were some extensions and things like that signed off on by, of course, the same guy, Jay Bratt, over at the DOJ. And then we have a statement of a service of the subpoena. This is the letter on May 11th from Mr. Corcoran. Dear Mr. Corcoran, from Jay Bratt. As we've discussed, in lieu of personally appearing, the custodian may comply with the subpoena by providing the responsive documents to the FBI. Attachment E. This is the certification. Okay, this is the guy who signs off on this document. Now, his name is redacted. We don't know who that is. He doesn't want to be identified for fear of retaliation or whatever. I don't know why. He's somebody who is going to be a witness in the case, apparently. It says certification. I have been designated to serve as a custodian of records for Trump for the purposes of this testimony and documents related to this subpoena. I understand that this certification is made to comply with the subpoena in lieu of personal appearance and testimony. And based on the information provided to me, here's what I say. A diligent search was conducted of all boxes. The search was conducted after receipt of the subpoena in order to locate any responsive documents. All documents have been provided. No copies were made, I swear or affirm. Okay, that's the actual certification that he signed. It says, after producing these, counsel for Trump represented that all records were stored in one location, a storage room at the premises, and the boxes of the records were the remaining repository of all the records that came out of the White House. Counsel further represented that there were no other records stored in any private office space outside of those locations. As the former president's filing indicates, the FBI's agents and DOJ attorney were permitted to visit the storage room. They say critically, however, the former president's counsel explicitly prohibited government personnel from opening or looking inside any of the boxes that remained in the storage room, giving no opportunity for the government to confirm that no documents with classified markings remained. You didn't let us come in there and rummage around through Melania's closet. And we're angry about that because we know you've got books in there. We know that there's underwear in there that we want to get our hands on. They say once in a secure government setting, the FBI conducted a preliminary review of the documents that were in the envelope. The preliminary document review revealed the following. 38, we've already got the list of those documents. They say 38 documents with classification markings, they say, remained on premises nearly 5 months after the production of the 15 boxes and 1.5 years after the end of the administration, which I guess means it's raiding time. It's raiding time, baby. That means we can just go and invade his home. So G paragraph, their facts continue. And once we get through the facts, the rest of the document will go pretty quickly because it's going to be a lot of law. But it tells us, G, after further investigation now, we're rummaging through those documents, they say the response to the subpoena was incomplete. They said on that document that they gave us everything and they didn't. And therefore, we know that obstructive conduct occurred in connection with the response to the subpoena. They were dishonest on that certification form. And they say classified information remained at the premises, which is why the DOJ got that search warrant. The DOJ writes, through further investigation, this is the mole at Mar-a-Lago, and don't know who this person is. They say the FBI uncovered multiple sources of evidence indicating that the response to the May 11th grand jury subpoena was incomplete and the classified documents remained at Mar-a-Lago, notwithstanding the sworn certificate that the custodian of records signed. They say in particular, the government developed evidence that a search limited to the storage room would not have uncovered all the classified documents at the premises. This is new information. Okay, this is new details. We can start to piece together the scheme here now, right? How they're unpacking all of this. Like, this was not in the affidavit. We didn't know how they figured this all out. And they're telling us now they've got basically a mole who has access to not only, it sounds like the storage room, or it's somebody, it could have been somebody who just cleans up in Trump's office or something, right? There's a classified document over there. Are you supposed to have that? It says the government also developed evidence that government records were likely concealed and removed from the storage room. And here you go, that efforts were likely taken to obstruct the government's investigation. That's a big claim, my friends. Obstruct the government's investigation. Efforts were likely taken. What word can you substitute for that sort of sequence? Efforts were likely taken to obstruct the government's investigation. Intent. That's what we're talking about. Intentional. Somebody was intentionally concealing documents, intentionally obstructing their investigation. Wow. That's evidence of a mens rea, isn't it? A mental state. They say this includes evidence indicating that boxes formerly in the storage room were not returned prior to counsel's review. See what that means? They're saying that Trump invited the FBI over. They say, oh yeah, all the boxes are right in this room. Right in this little closet. Just go take a look. And they said, before the FBI agents come over, why don't you just take that stack of boxes and put them in that closet over there? Don't tell them that they're in that closet. We move half the boxes out before you tell them to go in there. So the prosecutors write, they say, against that backdrop of this musical chairs of library book boxes and relying on the probable cause that the investigation had developed at that time, on August 5th, the government applied to the judge for a warrant. We cited 3 statutes. willful retention on national defense information, concealment or removal of government records, and obstruction of federal investigation. Right, and what you're going to notice is that none of this stuff is confidentiality, right? They're going to try to override any of the confidentiality arguments. It's not saying confidential government records. It's just government records. It's not saying confidential national defense information. It's just saying national defense information. So they're going to try to sort of cut the legs out on the confidentiality or classification argument, saying that it doesn't matter if he declassified this, that, or whatever. It's about having the document, the physical possession of the document. It's sort of like might even be, well, I don't know. I have to read the statutes again, but we'll take a look. I mean, if he does get charged with those, I think they're going to try to beat around the classification, just saying really the obstruction charge was probably the most obvious one. We'll see. They say on the same date, Judge Reinhart thought probable cause existed. That's why he authorized the search warrant. And we were allowed to search. The government gave us permission. We searched 45 Trump's office space at the premise. We searched all storage rooms. We searched all rooms or areas within the premises used or available to be used by the former president and his staff. We looked at all structures or buildings on the estate, but not areas currently at the time of the search being occupied or used by third parties. Things like private guest suites. Reinhart authorized the government to seize any evidence of applicable crimes, and so we did. They said he gave us a broad range here. We could just go with a big wheelbarrow and just start shoving stuff in there, which is why we got Trump's 3 passports. Because there was no limit on this. It was gratuitous. Whatever you need, just get evidence of the applicable crimes, which is basically everything. Even the search warrant itself said all presidential records from 2017 to 2021. All of them. They say, importantly, the government was authorized by the warrant to seize any physical documents with classified markings along with any boxes in which the documents are located. Okay, so for example, you could have a safe full of non-confidential things, but if you have one confidential thing in there, the whole batch has been tainted, you can take the whole safe. You've got one box full of pictures of your mother, and then you have one classified document, which is a nice letter from some foreign official or somebody, and it's in that box. They get to take the whole box. And in the pictures of your mother, you've got your passports and all of your personal stuff. Right? They just take the whole thing because the search warrant was so broad, as well as any other containers that are collectively stored or found together. All of them, whatever you want. So they got that permission from the judge and they execute the search warrant and they say, okay, well, during the August 8th search warrant, the government seized a bunch of boxes, 33 of them, and it contained classified info at the highest levels. Pursuant to the above described search protocols, the government seized 33 items of evidence, falling within the scope of the attachment B to the search warrant that contained the list of materials. 3 classified documents that were not located in boxes, but were located in the desks in the 45 office were also seized, right? So 3 items were in Trump's desk. And I guess they could seize the entire desk, which is probably why they got the passports. Per the search warrant protocols, the documents seized included documents that were collectively stored or found together with documents with classification markings. One classified document, you get the whole stinking desk if you want it. It says here, paragraph 6, they say plaintiff Trump repeatedly claims that his passports were outside the scope of the warrant and that they were improperly seized, and that the government in returning them had admitted as much. But they say these claims are incorrect. Consistent with attachment B to the search warrant, the government seized the contents of the desk drawer, there you go, that contained the classified documents and the governmental records commingled with other documents. So you have a desk drawer, right, like this. You just open it up. It's just full of crap. Like, here, listen to mine. Can you hear that? Listen to all that crap in there. So Trump has one of those out. And he's got, one classified document, whatever. And they just take the whole drawer out and they just dump it in a box. And they take the whole stinking desk. The other documents included 2 official passports, one of which was expired, and 1 personal passport, which was expired. The location of the passports is relevant evidence in an investigation of unauthorized retention and the mishandling of national defense information. Nonetheless, the government decided to return those passports in its discretion. Very nice of them. They could have seized it, apparently, because it's part of their investigation. It's part of their evidence. Ugh. All right, so we scroll back up. They say the investigative team has reviewed all the materials in the containers that the privilege team did not segregate as potentially attorney-client privilege. So FBI agents are rummaging through all of Trump's boxes and then separating them out, and they're saying they're doing a great job. Of the seized evidence, 13 boxes or containers contain documents with classified markings, over 100 unique documents with classified markings. That is more than twice the amount that was produced back on June 3rd in response to the subpoena. And again, right, they're saying that that is now illegal. They wanted all the documents. They are not even interested in litigating that issue about whether these are presidential records or declassified or not national defense documents or any of those things, whether they're covered by any of the privilege that Evan Corcoran asserted. They don't care about it. They say they're ours. We're coming to get them. Certain documents had colored cover sheets indicating their classification markings. Levels range from confidential to top secret. Certain documents included additional sensitive compartments that signify very limited distribution. In some instances, even the FBI counterintelligence personnel and DOJ attorneys conducting the review required additional clearances before they were permitted to review certain documents. Interesting. Now let's take a look at that photograph now while we're thinking about this. Remember, this is the photograph that is attached as attachment F to the government's response to not appoint a special master. Attachment F is the photograph, and you see here, it is entered into the official court docket at page 18 of 18, August 30th, in the case number that we're following, which is Donald Trump suing the United States government, saying that a special master must be appointed. Taking a look at this photograph, you'll notice what looks to be the carpet of Mar-a-Lago right down here. Looks very nice. I wonder how many threads are in there, but it's probably very comfy. And we've got some, looks like, storage boxes on the left side. And we have no idea what room in Mar-a-Lago this is, whether this is Trump's office or some other office. We see what looks like a banker's box seen here, which of course is potentially one of the boxes that they were rummaging through, or one of the boxes that they actually hauled out of his office. Don't know. But in this box, we've got, looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different framed photographs, probably magazine covers or articles. Trump has that style, right? He has sort of floor to ceiling photographs. And I've seen a lot of that style, right? A lot of politicians and public figures, just this sort of, they have floor to ceiling. John McCain actually had this. I actually was invited over to his home one time when I was in high school, and he had floor to ceiling photographs all over the place, right? And it looked almost exactly like this, and they were all over the place. So you can see Trump probably has something very similar going on. You've seen the presentation of that in front of all sorts of videos and things. So it's not unusual that he would have that. Now, we talked about this in the actual motion that they filed. They said that there's a big commingling of things, like it was a big messy desk drawer. And this just doesn't look like this. This looks pretty neat. This looks like the photograph clippings, all neat and orderly, not sort of messy all over the place. What does look messy are these national security top secret documents, which are apparently extremely sensitive, just dumped all over the floor in the middle of the raid. And they're just rummaging through them. Now, it's very interesting to me to ask, who took this photograph and what is their national security clearance? What type of capabilities do they have? Are they taking these photographs with iPhones or with legitimate equipment that has a proper chain of custody to make sure that that equipment is not jeopardized? Are they taking these on iPhones? Who is redacting these redactions on each one of these pages? Is this some FBI agent just throwing this up into Photoshop and, redacting this document? I mean, there are security concerns with that, right? You're not supposed to put your Bitcoin seed phrase in a photograph. You're not supposed to take a picture of your Bitcoin seed phrase, right? Because the seed phrases might be extracted out and used by nefarious actors, right? By algorithms that can just pick up the text. So are they exercising proper security protocols for this? I mean, it's also sort of a shocking thing to say that, hey, America, or I guess enemies of America, this is what our documents look like. And this is how we handle them. If we're the FBI, we just dump them all over the floor. So I've got questions about who was redacting these documents, what software they were using, what cameras they were using, how many photographs they took, if they deleted the photographs off their iPhones or whatever was going on here, right? And they're looking at the documents. They're actually, this page, they've actually taken the cover sheet off and flipped it back under it so that you can see what's on the front of it. And it looks like a presidential seal or a DOD seal. I can't see what that is. Some of these are marked secret, secret. But you see the persuasive effect of this, right? It's a document, all top secret, top secret, top secret. What I'm guessing is that they sort of just gathered up all the documents that had big red fonts on them and big yellow borders that look scary, like out of, one of those, James Bond movies or a Jason Bourne movie. Here's your mark. Burn this after you're done. Right. But then this one's flipped over and they're actually reading it. So they're just rummaging through it. So, I don't know what the security details are or what the clearance level is for anybody who is involved in this. But every single part of this investigation, if they really are dealing with national security matters that it could wreck America, this seems pretty cavalier. I mean, to be honest with you, somebody's just taking photographs and they're just attaching it as exhibits. And all right. So a lot of questions about that. Looks about as staged as can be to me. Feels like they sort of staged it. They set it up in a way that is going to give it the maximum effect, right? Maximum font. They made sure that you got to see this Time magazine cover in there. And they are just sort of organizing it like you would organize a drug raid. It reminded me of that movie called Super Troopers, where they sort of looked like this when they busted their raid, when they got their raid conducted and completed. Right? This is kind of what the FBI is doing right now. FBI's like, look at our documents. Here, throw me a shotgun. Look at our documents here. And they're propping up all the cocaine and the secret, top secret security clearance and the red, borders and the big red fonts. Very, very, animated, very excited about these documents. But it's very curious because they just told us how dangerous these things were and how reckless it was for Donald Trump to be treating documents like this. Meanwhile, they are treating it just like that. So you can see there, let's go back to the rest of this motion. They say, notwithstanding counsel's representation on June 3rd that materials from the White House were only located in the storage room, classified documents were found in both the storage room and Trump's office, which may have been the floor of the photo that we just looked at. We don't know. They say the search casts serious doubt on the claim in the certification and now in the motion that there was, in fact, a diligent search. Right? This is the obstruction. You signed on that certification and you didn't get there. They say the records were just not responsive to the subpoena. In that storage room alone, the FBI agents found 76 documents with classification markings. All the documents seized on August 8th have been segregated from the rest of the documents that had been separately maintained and stored in accordance with procedures. That the FBI, in a matter of hours, recovered twice as many documents with classified markings as the diligent search says it calls into serious question whether the representations made in the certification are true. In other words, they had more library books than they let on to. And as soon as we entered into their residence, we found all of them. They say the privileged team, Judge, has already completed its work. We don't need a special master. We've already completed its review of materials, and we've already identified stuff that were potentially privileged. Privileged review team only identified a limited set of materials, and pursuant to the court order that came out from Reinhart, we were allowed to do this. Having completed our review, the privileged team is prepared, pending direction from the court, to proceed in accordance with your procedures. Now, here's the argument you get about standing, right? Saying that there is no ability for Trump to even sue. So we're going to fly through this because this is some sort of heavy legal lifting. But the argument is that these are not Trump's records, that he doesn't have a basis to file a lawsuit because he's got no stake in this, right? There's no skin in the game. Saying that in order for him to have skin in the game, they got to show he has a possessory interest in the property that was seized. They say he has no property interest in the presidential records. They say the government does, which is curious because President Clinton still has all of his sock drawer tapes in his possession. That's not back in the National Archives. So how does that work? How do some records become personal and some become presidential? Well, we talked all about that in the case of Clinton's sock drawer that Judge Amy Berman decided back in whenever that was, out of the DC circuit. They say Trump's filings don't even address those provisions, and they don't even make any arguments on the basis of the Presidential Records Act. They say Trump is not entitled to the return of the property. They say the government can't keep these things. They say Trump is not even specifying what material he wants, and that none of these things are subject to return under the criminal rules for 4 reasons. 1, search warrant was authorized and approved. Nothing was outside the scope. Even if personal effects were seized, the rules don't require their return if the warrant was executed in good faith. And then number 4, an independent review says that Trump could obtain those things if he wanted, if he establishes a basis for that. They say Trump is not entitled to injunctive relief. So Trump can't tell you, judge, to tell us to stop looking through the documents. He hasn't established an injunction is necessary, and that's some sort of heavy injunction, legal heavy lifting, so we'll fly through that one. Here's an interesting thing, though. They say the former president has also not established a likelihood of success on the merits. So, in other words, judge, don't give him any help because he's not going to succeed. He's going to lose this case, and if you give him more resources now, it's not going to take us anywhere useful, and so just cut it here. And they're talking about this injunction. They say any presidential records seized pursuant to the search warrant belong to the U.S., not to Trump. Therefore, he cannot claim he was injured by any of this. They talk about the government notifying the court yesterday that the DOJ and the DNI, right, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, are currently facilitating a classification review of these materials. ODNI is leading an intelligence community assessment of the risk to national security that would result from the disclosure of these materials. We talked about this previously. Remember, Judicial Watch wanted damage assessments done for all sorts of other things like Hillary. When she deleted all those emails, we wanted to know what was the damage done by that? What was the damage done by the leaks of the emails or the hack of the emails or the voluntary disclosure of the emails? What was the damage done? They didn't do it, but they're doing it on this one because this one is a political enemy. Hillary Clinton was not. Any possible injury is thus at most an incremental theoretical harm. And they say Trump also filed his motion late. He filed his motion 2 weeks after the search occurred. So he's already just way late. So the harm has already been done, and therefore, judge, there's nothing that you can do. Injunction is totally inappropriate, and that a special counsel is not necessary here. Yeah, they're making sort of, special counsels are unusual. It's not common, and they're making those arguments. They say special master here is not appropriate. It's not an executive privilege thing. And as we fast forward through the rest of this, you can see it's sort of executive privilege, heavy lifting. And so let's fast forward to the conclusion and see how the government prosecutors wrap this up because they've addressed most of it. Here's the conclusion. It says, the court should not appoint a special master, but if it does, it should give us the following conditions and limitations. And they're asking in summation, page 35, the court should deny the request by Trump to appoint a judicial master and oversight and deny the request to return any of the seized items sent over by Juan Antonio Gonzalez, also signed off on by Jay Bratt, Counterintelligence, the same guy who's been working on this case for quite a long time. Certificate of service confirming that all of this was in fact delivered over to Donald Trump. And you can see we just scrolled through and read through both of these, 36 pages of the government's response to the special master. Oral arguments on this will be taking place tomorrow, and Donald Trump's team will presumably be there. And so we'll see what they have to say about it. Now, Trump was on True Social after the photograph was published, and he had some interesting things to say about it. Here's what he said. He said, "This is terrible. The way that the FBI, during the raid of Mar-a-Lago, threw documents haphazardly all over the floor, perhaps pretending it was me that did it. And then they started taking pictures of them for the public to see. Thought they wanted to keep them secret. Luckily, I declassified." Is what he says. And so Donald Trump, I'm sure that tweet is going to come back to bite him at some point in the future because they're going to say that he's confirming that he knew he had the documents. Here's another one where he's saying, whatever happened to nuclear, a word that was leaked early on by the FBI and the DOJ to the fake news media. Was there nuclear weapons in those boxes? I didn't see them. And we had another interesting quote from Trump. He posted this one. He said, "Big rally in Pennsylvania on Saturday night. Crowds already forming. Much, much, much to say. Don't miss it." Okay, so good luck in Pennsylvania there. But all right, so that's Donald Trump responding to the photograph, obviously sort of poking some fun at it, saying, well, they were very messy. It looks like an FBI agent just kind of tripped and just dumped all the boxes, all the documents right out. Whoa, just kind of dumped them all out. And all right, so Donald Trump is, I think, poking fun at him a little bit. And I was asking myself about this. A lot of people, even some, Ann Coulter types and Judge Napolitano types and all of them are, Trump's going to get indicted. And it's probably true. And Trump is going to get convicted. And that might also be true. But I don't think he cares at all. I think it's the Steve Bannon defense. He just wants to win the presidency again. And that solves all problems for him. Doesn't matter what he's indicted with if he's president. We also saw a very interesting summation of this from a former DOJ attorney. His name is Brett Tolman, and he is communicating to us that maybe the DOJ has some problems. Brett Tolman is a former DOJ attorney, and he's saying that DOJ oversight is problematic. Here he is.
This is something that is making the Department of Justice very uncomfortable, Jason, because typically they like to keep all of this in-house. They have a review team called a taint team that will review documents that they seize to make sure they didn't seize anything that was privileged. Then you have the Trump lawyers filing a motion for a special master. Why are they uncomfortable? They're uncomfortable because they always keep the decisions, the review, the reports after the review, all internal. There's never an outside objective third party that is looking at it. This is a move I have not seen in 20 plus years in the criminal justice system, Jason. This is the potential appointment of an outsider, a third party that's objective, who's going to look at what they did. And that's why you're seeing the discomfort in DOJ.
Discomfort in the DOJ because they don't want a special master to come out and overview what they're doing. They're used to just saying, no, we run things around here. We're just going to take care of it. Leave us alone. But the judge is now considering appointing a special master. He says he's been doing this for 20-something years. He's never seen anything quite like it. And so you can see why the DOJ might be a little bit concerned about this. Why are they publishing these documents? They were very, very tight-lipped about this until recently. Now they're saying, hey, look at everything. Look what a monster Trump was with all of those documents splayed all over the floor, which, of course, they set up. Maybe they are nervous about it. We're going to hear what the judge has to say when the oral arguments take place tomorrow. And I hope that you subscribe and join us as we continue to cover this. And I'd appreciate it if you hit that like button if you're watching out there, because it does help the show reach more people. And we're grateful for your support there. All right. And so while this is ongoing, right, today was sort of a big day. The photo hit and a lot of the usual crowd is sort of hyperventilating over the photo. Photos here and look how bad it is. I mean, I've read a lot about it today, but there are some people who are making the point that this is basically fatal. There's nothing left that we can do here. Ann Coulter is one of those people who says Donald Trump is done. There's no coming back. Write him off. Just forget about it. There's nothing even to talk about anymore. Guys like Glenn Youngkin are the future. Ann Coulter has a new podcast and a new Substack. We're going to listen to her for about a minute and a half and see what she has to say about it, because this is an interesting narrative that is developing all over the place. You even see on Fox News, Mr. Doocey here got into it a little bit with Kristi Noem and asked her, how could Donald Trump do something that was so unprecedented? Well, we're going to talk about that word, unprecedented. I've got some bullet points to attend to there. We're also going to take a look at the Republican primary polls and say, is Ann Coulter right at all? Does she even know what she's talking about when she says that Donald Trump is done? Here is Ann Coulter now communicating. There's no hope left for the man. Just move on, America. And she's also saying that people in the conservative media are lying to you about his popularity.
Republicans, it's not the party of Trump. It's safe to come back. And it's safe for Republicans to stand up and run without Donald Trump.
Ooh, okay.
I mean, look at Youngkin. I think what is influencing certain conservative outlets on TV and radio is everybody they hear from is one of the, diehard, the few dwindling remaining Trump fanatics. But after the election and then after January 6th, normal people, I'm not a normal person. I'm a political nut.
That's true.
And I stopped paying attention to politics. It's just a drag. It's a bore. It started to get fun as the world went to hell and Joe Biden's numbers were plummeting. And I think what really got normal people back into paying attention to politics was Glenn Youngkin's election in Virginia. And And he was fantastic. He ran a beautiful campaign. Virginia, I would have said it's a blue state. I guess now that he's been elected, we can go back to calling it purple. But whoa, it's been a while since a Republican has won in Virginia.
And didn't Donald Trump endorse Glenn Youngkin? And didn't he do some campaign events for him? And how does she say that there was no involvement there at all?
Not think he was going to win, not because he wasn't running a great campaign, but what was great about his campaign is he didn't attack Trump, but he sure didn't let him campaign for him. Trump had nothing to do with that campaign.
I don't know that that's true.
The white privilege being taught to school children and the transgender nonsense in the schools, and white voters in Virginia came out in droves to vote for him.
All right, so that's Ann Coulter, right? She's got a podcast out and she's trying to get people to sign up to her Substack. But is she right? Is she even on the mark on this at all? Because everything is basically factored in now at this point. I mean, Donald Trump has been under the January 6th Inquisition for coming up on 2 years now, and he still has numbers that look like this. Over from 538, which we all know has its criticisms. This is what they've got for us on Republican polls in the primary coming up in 2024. And take a look at these numbers. Doesn't look like Ann Coulter is on the money at all. You see here, Ron DeSantis versus Donald Trump in the primary. Trump's up 55% to 15. That's a recent poll from August 20th to 2024. Guess what? That also has factored into it the raid at Mar-a-Lago. It's all there. The raid happened on August 8th, right? So it's still Trump by 40 points on that one, 46 to 22 here back on August 19th. All of these are coming from Echelon. YouGov have Trump senior 50%, DeSantis 33. Closer there on August 18th. But he's still up by a wide margin in many of these other polls. Not even close. So Ann Coulter seems like she might be off a little bit on that. And she's also, I think, forgetting the fact that Donald Trump actually did support Glenn Youngkin. And he may not have done rallies with the guy, but they weren't adversarial. Glenn Youngkin did not run as an anti-Trumper, is my point. But Ann Coulter's not the only person where this is sort of percolating. Over on Fox News, we have Peter Doocey, who was asking Kristi Noem. Kristi Noem, of course, the governor of South Dakota. She's on Fox News on the morning show. And this was immediately after the photo was released of the documents splayed all over the floor, dropped off by the FBI at Mar-a-Lago. And they say, how could this unprecedented act have happened? Miss Noem, can you tell us about what Trump was even thinking?
Well, ultimately, it comes down to why did he have all that secret stuff at Mar-a-Lago? You know, I know his team has said that they declassified it, but that's news to the agencies that those documents belong to. And Governor, he had apparently 3 classified documents in his desk. And then the stuff, as Brian detailed on the floor, it shows 5 yellow folders marked top secret and another one that says secret SCI, which means sensitive compartmentalized information. Those are the biggest secrets in the world.
Wow.
Why would he, and apparently the former president went through them in January. Why wouldn't he say, oh, you know what? I really need to turn that back over. Why did he have all that stuff at Mar-a-Lago?
Well, we've already talked all about that, right? He may say that those are, declassified or executive privilege documents. Those could be documents that are personal records, not presidential records. There's a million different reasons here, Steve. Tons of them, actually. And it doesn't sound as insane as you might be thinking.
That's why I think it's important that this is transparent and that we do have someone who's outside of the DOJ looking at this and talking to people. What is this information? We don't know what was in there. We don't know. Believe President Trump declassified all this information. Let's find out really what the process is, what is right, what's precedent that other presidents have followed, and make sure that this is done correctly.
Governor, I don't think any president has ever carted off that many documents to their house after they left the presidency. Well, there was no.
I don't think that anybody like Obama or Clinton or Bush would have done anything quite like that, right? Unprecedented is where he's going with this conversation. But here's a couple reasons why that might have happened there, Steve. One, was it ever something that happened where a former president would waive executive privilege of the outgoing administration? No. Biden did that to Trump. That's why all of this is brand new. Biden and NARA made the personal decision all the way at the top at the White House. Merrick Garland said that he personally approved the DOJ warrant. The whole thing started after NARA communicated with White House counsel about waiving executive privilege that started this whole snowball down the mountain. So they did it. Of course, it's never happened before because nobody's ever done that before, because this administration has decided to open the floodgates against political prosecution of their enemies. So how about that, number one, for Steve? Number two, unprecedented here to have judicial review over presidential documents such that a search warrant is authorized. Nuts. Judge Amy Berman issued a ruling on this in the Clinton sock drawer case, where she communicated, you want me as a judge to go wag my finger at the former president and tell him I've decided that those are presidential records and not personal records? You want me to do that from the judiciary? Are you out of your stinking mind? It's a separation of powers issue. It is a jurisdictional issue. It's an enforceability issue. You're saying that every time that we're going to have a fight over presidential records, you're going to file a lawsuit over this thing and you're going to expect the courts to duke this out for you? Are you nuts? So how do we have judicial review over presidential records? Brand new. First time ever. Entirely unprecedented, Steve. That's why. And lastly, have we ever seen a situation where the FBI is literally creating evidence about their political enemies? It has absolutely happened here. They generated the Trump PP tape and Crossfire Hurricane. We learned all about Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, the FBI lovers, conducting text messages with one another, saying that they will stop him. Michael Sussman going and meeting with Jim Baker, sitting down with him and saying, we've got all sorts of evidence that Trump is colluding with the Russians. Not true. All fake. And the FBI endorsed all of it and they ran with it. They shoved it down all of our gullets. So yeah, Donald Trump, yeah, maybe there are other reasons there, Steve, to address your hyperventilation there. And Kristi has got it right, in fact. Question, has any other president been investigated like this, Steve? Maybe that's why all of this is happening. And Kristi Noem is right on the money. So Ann Coulter and Fox News and others, they're seemingly trying to jump on this photo release bandwagon and say Trump is done. I'm not so sure about it. The polls say otherwise and precedent says otherwise. There's a lot of new things happening here that is breaking the mold. And we're going to have to cover it and see how it unfolds. And so I appreciate you subscribing and joining us on that journey. All right. And we've got one final segment left. We've got Joe Biden now. Now that he is sort of raiding the homes of his political enemies, he's now blaming Republicans or taunting Republicans. Joe Biden and the White House are out castigating MAGA Republicans, calling them semi-fascists and saying that they are threats to democracy. And Joe Biden is even taunting them, saying, what do you have? F-15s? I've got F-15s. You don't even have aircraft by which you can undermine my government. I'm in charge now, and your little pea shooters don't stand a chance. Here is Joe Biden at a rally communicating this, taunting the MAGA Republicans, saying, I've got F-15s and nukes. What do you got?
And for those brave right-wing Americans who say it's all about keeping America's independent and safe, if you want to fight against the country, you need an F-15. You need something a little more than a gun.
No laughter.
Joking. Think about this. Think about the rationale we use. That's you.
Okay, so it's actually a serious comment. Like it starts off as a joke. Nobody laughs, right? Because it's a terrible joke. And it's like, you're going to fight with your government. I mean, that's what he's saying now. You have to fight with your government if you want to have representation, I guess, in America. And you don't have F-15s. I do. This is the great unifying president. He says this. There's officers apparently in the stand. Everybody's wondering, wait a minute. If I don't have an F-15, you can lock me in my home again. If I don't have an F-15, you can mandate I put stuff in my body. You can tell me what I do with my kids and where I send them to school. You can tell me that my property's not my property anymore. CDC can just say, nope, they're our houses now. And if you don't have an F-15, you've got no remedy, I guess. One more time.
And for those brave right-wing Americans who say it's all about keeping America's independent and safe, if you want to fight against the country, you need an F-15. You need something a little more than a gun.
The Taliban didn't need F-15s, did they? The insurrectionists didn't need F-15s. All you need is a podium, I thought, to take over the country. You don't even need a gun. You can be charged with insurrection or whatever their analog is for throwing a water bottle at the Capitol Hill police. That's it. You don't need an F-15. You can take over the whole country with a couple of oath keepers. That's it, according to them.
No, I'm not joking. Think about this. Think about the rationale we use. That's used.
Think about the rationale. No, we're not going to go to war because we don't have F-15s. All right. So that's the president. Now, it's a strange new narrative that's coming out. He also posted this on Twitter. All right, this is part of a concocted narrative shift. He posted the extreme MAGA Republicans, which I kind of like the ring to that. I mean, it's kind of cool. You know, it's kind of like a sticker, extreme MAGA. Okay. Have made their choice to go backwards, full of anger, violence, hate, and division. We've chosen a different path. Forward, the future, unity, hope, and optimism. We choose to build a better America. Well, it doesn't look so good there, Joe. But he is out there, right? You see the language. Extreme MAGA Republicans. It started with just Donald Trump. Remember? He was saying fight, fight, fight. He instigated the whole thing. Then it started with Trump and his entourage. Bannon got picked up. Navarro got picked up. Then they went after Sebastian Gorka, Sean Hannity, everybody else who was sort of in his circle. Then it expands beyond that. It's not only the J6 insurrectionists who are violent. It's not only the J6 insurrectionists who are engaged in physical destruction. It's everybody. It's if you were grandma poking around through the Capitol building, if you were on the Capitol building grounds, if you were even texting like Enrique Tarrio, not even there that day, you are now an insurrectionist. But now it expands beyond that. Domestic violent extremism, homegrown violent extremism. The list goes on and on. Capitol Hill police are setting up shop in different locations around the country. They are censoring and banning people off social media platforms. We were victims of that multiple times through this saga after January 6th. And it just continues to go on and on and on. The hula hoop expands. And now it's all the way expanded out to MAGA Republicans. That's it. Which was something like 80 million people the last election. A lot. It's a big, big label. Now, this is an orchestrated maneuver, right? They want to fight against extreme MAGA Republicans. This is a narrative change. They're trying to define their enemy and label them so that they can fight against the straw man that they're setting up. And so they want Republicans. They want somebody who says, Joe Biden, I can do a lot with my weapon. I don't need an F-15. And he does something crazy, and then they can go, see, every Republican is crazy. Every single one of you is now an extreme MAGA Republican. And I just can't wait for what happens. I mean, what happens with this show if we can't talk about Trump anymore because we're now extremists who are undermining America? I mean, is YouTube going to content ban people now, not just issues? Right? It was just election, and then it was just COVID, and then now it's just hate speech. And are they going to actually target people now? Donald Trump? Maybe. They did it with Andrew Tate. We'll have to wait and see. The media is asking questions about this. We saw this woman here. Karine Jean Pierre is asked a question by this lady in the media, specifically about the progress that Joe Biden has made. Joe Biden came into office, and he was going to usher in this new era of unity, and he was going to bring us all together. Has he made any progress on that in these last 2 years here, Karine?
Just given that, you all have billed it as being related to the battle for the soul of America, which is something that he obviously ran on back in 2020.
She says, battle for the soul of America. He obviously ran on this in 2020. Are you guys making any progress on this here, Karine?
Look, he believes that it continues. He believes that we need to continue to fight for our democracy. And he's been very clear. You look at the extreme wing of a party, the MAGA Republicans.
There it is.
It's not stopping. It is continuing. And we heard it over the weekend as you're asking me about the president talking directly with legislators. And this is an important time. And he's not going to shy away from it. He's going to continue to lift that up and what he sees and what he's going to call out. And he believes that there are a majority of Americans who disagree with that, who disagree on the attack of our core values as a country.
Disagree? What did she say? She actually literally said nothing right there. Painful to listen to her, but we have to do it. I'm sorry. So she comes out and she's asked about, did Joe Biden make any progress? Remember at his inaugural address, unity and hope and bringing the country back together? None of that happened. And she just doubles down and says, well, he's committed to this. Okay, that's fine. He's committed to it. Do whatever you got to do. But we have a very important question that we have to ask ourselves. as Joe Biden is continuing to mull this over. For Joe Biden, of course, who is now calling all Republicans or extreme MAGA Republicans, he's labeling Republicans a certain way. The big question for Joe and for Karine is, how do you differentiate between the good Republicans and the bad Republicans? Which Republicans get to eat? Which ones don't? Which ones go to the front of the bus? Which ones go to the back of the bus? Hey, Joe, do you guys have rules for this? How do we figure this out?
When it comes to voters, how does the president differentiate between the ultra-MAGA folks who he sees as an extremist threat to democracy and the average GOP voter?
So, can't talk about voters from here. As you know, I get you. Not gonna. I just need to say that, right? Just to
Hatch Act.
just to
I
be
think
clear.
if she's, I can't talk about voters.
The president has been really clear about the leadership, right? The MAGA Republicans in leadership. They're the ones who have the platform. They're the ones who, again, the extremist part of the Republican Party. They're the ones who, folks listen to.
Okay, but how do you tell the difference? What is an extremist?
Violence, by trying to take away. They're the ones who are the legislators and trying to take away our rights, trying to take away our freedoms. And that's who the president is speaking to, right? He's being very targeted in that way and calling that out and saying, we can't allow our democracy to be attacked in this way. And they have a responsibility. Right? They have a responsibility in how
Karine,
they're doing their business.
He's raising his hand. You're not answering me, though. Yeah, so not answering the question. Karine has a little bit of a difficult time answering that. What's the difference between the MAGA and the ultra-MAGA, or the extreme MAGA, or the extreme ultra-MAGA, or the ludicrous mode MAGA? What's the difference? How do you guys differentiate them? I mean, we know that there's LGBTQ plus I expialidocious, but for us on the Republican side, or let's say non-liberals, it's complicated. I don't know what I am. I mean, I thought I was an insurrectionist at one point. I don't know. It's very complicated. If you're not a liberal, what are you? It's very confusing out there. And so we ask for some guidance from the people who know labels and they know letters very well, and they don't have much for us on this. She just says, America is over if we don't stop the MAGAs. So here is now the last clip from the Biden White House. And Biden is continuing with this narrative that the Republicans are all evildoers. And the big question comes up as a result of this. That's not what he sold us. This is a little bit of a bait and switch. How does he come into office during his inaugural address and tell us unity, America, and then turn around and say, except for you 81 million Republican MAGA monsters?
So we've heard many Republicans argue that this president ran as a uniter, and now he's calling MAGA Republicans, which is a very large swath.
Yeah, it's a big Republican group.
Semi-Fascists. He is arguing that they're a threat to democracy. Does the White House believe that this is a fair criticism by Republicans, that this is not unifying language?
So I'll say this, Nancy.
Third
Sadly,
time.
There are more examples than I can count on how we have seen recently armed attacks on federal law enforcement.
Armed attacks.
A couple of things I just want to say here.
Armed attacks on federal law.
Representative Paul Gosar has posted videos depicting him attacking the president and members of Congress. You have Representative Majority Taylor Greene has publicly expressed support for shooting prominent Democratic elected officials and suggesting physically assaulting transgender school officials.
What? Marjorie Taylor Greene wants to shoot Democrats? What?
You have Representative Madison Cawthorn has said...
Wait, Cawthorn? Oh, he's out of here soon, right?
Falsely. If our election systems continue to be rigged and continue to be stolen, then it's going to lead to one place, and that's bloodshed. And just last week, you had Governor Ron DeSantis suggested that Dr. Fauci should be physically assaulted.
Physically assaulted. He said that elf should be thrown in the Potomac. Physically assaulted.
Former President Trump has done the same many, many times. Look, and many of your colleagues have talked about and reported on this dangerous trend that we're seeing.
Hey, but what was the question, right? The question was not about all of those Republicans. The question was about Joe Biden. And the question involved the Republicans. They said they're being very critical of the president who is supposed to come in as a unifier, not being very unifying. And she talks about the Republicans who didn't make that promise. It's not about them. We're not asking about them. We're asking about your boss, your president, Karine.
And for example, the New York Times headline from this month, as right-wing rhetoric escalates, so do threats and violence. And so these are things that we have to call out.
Yeah, call them out.
Again, I was talking, I can't remember who just asked me the question. I was talking about soul of the nation, something the president has talked about since 2017.
Soul of the nation.
That article in The Atlantic. And he's called it out then. He called it out January 6th. He called it out Inauguration Day. He called it out last week. He called it out yesterday. So there is been a consistent...
She might be the worst press secretary of all time. She doesn't answer. It was the same answer 3 times. It was soul of the nation, soul of the nation, soul of the nation. President is consistent. President is consistent. He is consistent. Okay. So very terrible job from Karine Jean Pierre as usual. No new answers. You do see though how they are creating a new narrative where they are going to be just labeling Republicans as evildoers until the end of time. And anytime that there is any problem, like saying you want to throw a little elf into the Potomac, that's going to be framed as a physical violent threat. Okay? She just did it. She just said, if you're Ron DeSantis and you said Fauci needs to be thrown into the Potomac, that's verbal assault. That's violent assault. He should probably be investigated. They should probably form a committee. And if that's happening with DeSantis, woo, it's going to be fun for the rest of us, isn't it? And so that's the Biden White House labeling 81 million Americans as MAGA semi-fascist extremists. And we'll continue to cover that. So that, my friends, is it for the big segments on the day. You can see we covered a lot of ground. We did some heavy lifting at the start of the show. Talked about the scheduling. We've got a big oral argument taking place tomorrow. 36 pages. We sort of flew through the heavy lifting portions of that in the special master response from U.S. government prosecutors. Big updates on the Trump photo. We spent a lot of time on that. Heard from Coulter, who is probably, well, according to the polls, dead wrong about Trump being done. He looks about as healthy as ever. And Kristi Noem, I got corrected. Kristi Noem is, sort of standing firm for Trump against Steve Doocey over there on Fox News, who seems like they've sort of thrown in the hat on the Trump support. We also had the Biden White House attacking MAGA Republicans. And now, with all of that in the can, it is time to hear from you, my friends, over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com and taking a look at some of those amazing super chats that came in today. I see the first one here from YouTube is from A+ Computer Service. Computer Services, multiple. Sounds like a great place. Probably very smart, great grades, A+. I mean, it's great. Anything the FBI finds was planted, says A+ Computer Service. Well, it's going to be very interesting to see what they find. If they find a bunch of, non-issue stuff, then maybe that wasn't planted. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to find. Who knows? Here, 66 Anton says, if I can't you, Robert Grueller, can I be banned on YouTube for dead naming? Oh, if I call you, no, I mean, it's not going to, I'm not upset about that. I mean, it's an old name. It's not accurate anymore. I was mislabeled. My actual name is properly applied now. But no, I mean, that's, people have called me a lot worse than that, and that's okay. Good to see you, 66. Ditka's Bears with a whoa. Ditka's Bears. That's very generous of you. Very generous. Thank you very much for that. And you didn't even ask a question. So now what am I supposed to do here? I guess I'll just sit here and look at you with a lot of gratitude, Ditka's Bears. Thank you. We have another one from Diamond Gun. It came in. He says, Justin Trudeau is a former U.S. attorney named Brett Tolman. Kind of does look like him a little bit. Yeah. Brett Tolman's a good follow. I sort of was scrolling through a lot of his stuff today. He does really good work. Wood's Precision Arms is here. Says, isn't it weird that the DOJ lawyers say this judge has no jurisdiction to make these arguments, yet they used a magistrate judge and not a congressional appointed Article 4 judge to sign the warrant? How? Yeah, it's because they're using the tools at their disposal. They're doing a very good job of it. This whole thing has been concocted and gamified out. I'm sure of it. They knew what they were doing when they waived executive privilege. They know how they want to get Trump, and they're just executing the plan. So, this is not unusual, right? Lawyers make arguments that serve themselves, and they dispose of arguments that don't serve them. And so, yeah, they'll make one argument in one courtroom, walk literally to the next courtroom, and make the opposite argument. Prosecutors do this all the time. Good to see you. Wood's Precision Arms. We got some great names here. Wood's Precision Arms is in the house. A+ Computer Services. Outstanding. Diamond Gun. We saw Philip is here. He says, Rob, TSSCI is issued to thousands of personnel in the government military. It's not that special. Very possible the docs weren't properly marked as declassified. Not a big deal. Honestly, I think that's the answer on this whole thing, but they're going to make it a big deal because they don't have to tell you what's in the documents. They just say TS SCI and everybody goes, holy crap. Did you see the width on the font? That was girth. I mean, there was some real red girth on that thing. And that means I think it's probably very serious. And I'm scared now that Trump had all of those in his desk. That's it. And it's almost more effective than saying he had some stupid declassified documents, right? If they came out and they said, no, like it was an old letter from this old politician that had his DNA on it or something, and therefore it's classified, right? And you say, okay, so it was important back then, but it's not now. It was classified because it was close in proximity to time, or it was close in proximity to a geographic location, or it was an open issue. It's not an open issue anymore, and so it's no longer a thing. If it was a bunch of that and they told us that, right, we would all then look at it and we would say, this was really stupid. But if they don't have to tell us what it was because it's classified, then we get to fill in the blank. We can call it whatever we want. You can call it nuclear codes. You can call it crossfire hurricane if you're on the right. Trump had crossfire hurricane stuff. The FBI wanted it back. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's not. If you're on the left, you can do the opposite. Nuclear codes. He was going to sell this stuff to the Saudis or whatever. He had top secret CIA clandestine operation agents undercover there. Right? You can fill in the blanks with whatever you want. And so it's more effective from their perspective than telling us what's actually in it. But I agree. I think it's probably much ado about nothing. They're going to turn it into much ado about something because it serves them. Kevlar is here with a super chat. No question, but thank you, Kevlar, for that one as well. Also very generous, and I'm grateful for your support. Over on Locals, we had some show up. Oh, John McGarvey. John McGarvey's in the house. Let me see. Can I pull these up on screen so that you guys can see these too? Yeah, I can. So here's John McGarvey. He's here. He says, okay, Rob, this is what's going on over on Locals. This is the Locals back end. You can see. He says, okay, Rob, show us on the doll where McCain touched you. Yeah. I went to high school actually with some of the McCains actually with same grade as some of the McCains. And I'll just leave it at that. But I was very fortunate to go to a very, very good school. And because I was on the wrestling team, John McCain he actually was sort of involved with the wrestling team a little bit when I was there. For my freshman year, I think he was there. So I got a little bit of experience with John McCain because of the wrestling team. Pretty interesting. Anyway, so John McGarvey, McCain, he didn't touch me anywhere, but one of his family members certainly did. We were on the wrestling team, so yeah, you can leave it at that. This one came in from John Allen. He says, "Awesome work, Rob, as always." Well, thank you, John. Very, very nice of you to be here. Grateful for your support. I'm glad that you're here. John is always in the chat and very, very fun to be there. He says, "Paul me no." He says, "Putting an end to the big question," and I don't know what question that was, Paul. I don't know what that was. It was the photo, maybe? I don't know. You have to fill me in on that. But that's what's going on over on Locals. We've got Locals tips now coming in over there, which is just super cool. Locals also released the ability to do to publish articles. So they're sort of competing with Substack a little bit, which I don't know if that changes for me. That means I have to write stuff down, which is like, I mean, I like to write. I do write, but I'd rather just ramble into a camera and get all angry about stuff. It's much better. Here, we also had some comments come in over from our friends at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We're going to do a refresh over there on the comment thread, if I can figure out where I put that. Had to do a reboot before the show started, which is why things are a little discombobulated at the moment. But they are loading, and we're queuing up the questions as we speak. We're scrolling down, and then we're jumping into them. And there's a lot of them today, which is going to be good. All right. Down here on the bottom, Engineer is here starting us off. Former LEO is in the house. He says, "I can't wait until Trump decides when he wants to release the security videos. Maybe they can make a mini series out of it." Yeah. You see the Mar-a-Lago security footage. You see all of the FBI agents just like dumping the boxes out. They're just like rummaging, shaking them out. All right. Pull out the desk drawer. Dump those out too. Ridiculous. Cindy says, "Okay, I'm guessing your staged comments." Cindy, you probably just joined, so you probably didn't know what this post was. I posted, and Cindy's probably like, "What the heck are you talking about?" Says, "I'm guessing your staged comments are about either the FBI taking the picture of the papers or the thought that President Trump actually did it. I can guarantee Trump has more sense than that. Yeah. Yeah. It was about the staging of the FBI. The FBI setting it up for maximum effect, for making sure that they got the maximum mileage out of the photo. Right? There's many photos that they could pick and play and add, but they picked one for maximum effect. The Antikiss shared this one over on Locals.
Why don't you go stand over there next to your girlfriend?
Americans, Democrats, and Republicans. Americans are telling the Democrats to go stand over by the Republicans. Let's start this over.
Why don't you go stand over there next to your girlfriend? Why don't you go stand over there next to your girlfriend?
That's Sylvester, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Violent, no. Peaceful political love, just like that. Political. A political backhand is what we're looking for there. Thank you, Vientikis, for sharing that one. Outstanding as usual. Troll Master says, I would rather have my heads in the cloud than have my head buried in the sand. Yeah. Kenny says, I know the feeling of being under attack is being labeled a fascist and what that tends to produce. Why is the establishment going to this extreme? I believe they know it's not working anymore. They've driven fear for 6 years and nothing comes out of their rhetoric. I don't want a civil war with my neighbors. None of us behave like Antifa. Establishment needs us to speak to one another, not to speak to one another, lest we unite the goal of removing them. Lies, corruption, media, emergency powers, all the things are, we can all say need immediate overhaul. It's not your neighbors, it's politicians wanting to stay in power. Good comment, Kenny. Sorry, I sort of botched the reading of that, but good comment. Three Girlies is here, says, what would stop the FBI from just putting some of those cover sheets down on the ground or filling it with something that wasn't classified? I don't put it past them. You shouldn't. They've made up evidence before. Many times. Not like once. Many times. You would think the CCTV cameras would show the ripped up pages, the FBI staging photos, and other actions listed in response from the DOJ. Youngest Girlie says hi. She was grinning ear to ear from yesterday's show when you said she's my favorite. She is the favorite. She is my favorite, the show's favorite, the youngest girlie. Shout out to the youngest girlie over at the Three Girlies household. We're grateful that you are all here with us. And it's a good comment, Three Girlies. I don't think that you're far off on that. If you just sat there and you said, I trust everything the FBI did in this investigation, they've got no political bias against Donald Trump, and everything was done above board, you'd be crazy, right? Like that would be the crazy person. Not those of us saying that maybe they did something nefarious. Three Girlies is here, says Jim Trusty was on Fox. He said the FBI is very efficient sometimes. They unilaterally had the filter team there with no input from Trump's lawyers. He says they still need judicial oversight. 6.5-minute video, so check that out over on Fox News. Let's see if Trusty, if we get a little Trusty clip right here. Maybe this is him speaking.
Incredibly, it's a striking difference between the two situations. Hillary Clinton had no protection under the Presidential Records Act. That had nothing to do with her at all in terms of how you actually classify these documents as only presidential or personal. The classification doesn't matter. She had a personal server. That is a tremendously more insecure way of having access to documents than some papers under lock and key at a basement of a place where Secret Service is on guard as well.
Heather says it's rather convenient that they rushed through looking all of this stuff. They couldn't do that when they were supposed to. They were supposed to have a taint team at Mar-a-Lago at the time of the search. They were not supposed to indiscriminately throw everything into boxes and take it back to headquarters for a taint team to go through it. Yeah, look, that photograph just in and of itself, it looks like they're just throwing documents around. I mean, it looks wild. I agree with that attorney. Also says, if an Article 3 judge doesn't have jurisdiction, how does a magistrate have jurisdiction to sign the search warrant? How come this doesn't make sense? The idea that the judge does not have jurisdiction to decide this case seems as shady as the taint team. What is the idea that this judge is going to accept any of these arguments? It seems to me this response is rather insulting to the judge. It is, actually. It's saying, Judge, you don't have power to do certain things. Right? And that's, it is insulting to the judge. I think you picked up on that well, Heather. And they say, they're sort of presuming the conclusions in their arguments. Remember, they said that it's basically the arguments have already been settled. And the answer to that is no, it's not, right? You say that these are yours. Trump says that they are his. That's the whole point of this fight. It's the whole point. And they're writing their motions as though it is it's conclusory, in other words. Now, they're saying So there are two separate things at play here, right? The court, they're saying that the court doesn't have jurisdiction over Trump because of standing. They're saying they don't have that issue with the other court because they went through the magistrate judge to get the search warrant, right? And this is something that's pretty common. Like they've got lower level judges that issue warrants all the time. If you go, like, for example, Three Girlies, wherever you're at, whatever your local, jurisdiction is, they've got judges just on call that just field warrants that come in, and I don't know what happened here, but they signed this warrant through a WhatsApp, okay? A WhatsApp phone call. So I don't know that they sat down with this judge and had a serious thought over this. I don't know. But it's a different argument. So you're coming at it from two different angles. They're saying Trump doesn't have jurisdiction because he's filing a complaint as a civilian who doesn't have custody over those documents or any right to custody. And simultaneously, they're saying we do because we're the DOJ. We can apply for a warrant just through the regular mechanisms, the regular levels of power. And so they're two, right? They're the DOJ. Trump is just a private citizen. So he has no standing. So they're two kind of separate areas of the law, right? You would sort of expect naturally that they're equal parties on the same playing field, but they're not, right? Trump is just a private citizen, so he doesn't have the same powers that the DOJ does, is really what it comes down to. It says the whole response from the DOJ seems to be a lot of mudslinging from a third-party check on the DOJ and the FBI. Yeah, they do not want a special master appointed watching them. Zach Nichols says, good afternoon. This is a quote from Merrick Garland. He says, since I became Attorney General, I made clear we're going to speak through our court filings. Now the Justice Department filed a motion in Florida to unseal the warrant. The search was of premises of the Florida belonging to Trump. And the former president confirmed the search that evening as is his right. Yeah, I think we played that entire clip, Zach. Thanks for that. Speech Unleashed, he says, the FBI goes to social media about Hunter Biden laptop being unverified, even though they knew it was Hunter's because they didn't want false info to spread. However, the FBI has no problem releasing pictures of classified documents Trump had without even knowing if Trump had declassified them. Double standard much? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they'll spread that stuff all over the place if it serves them. If it hurts them, they'll make sure that it's not. C. Reed says, a bit off topic, but you like a good conspiracy. The real reason Batgirl got scrapped is because of Karine, I think is what he's saying. Is that what the Batgirl character? I never saw any of the Batgirls. Wasn't one of those rated the worst movie of all time? The one with what's her face? Halle Berry. Yeah, her. It was the worst movie, I think. I've never seen any of them. Robute says, can we have Merrick Garland as Heinrich Mueller, the Gestapo chief, as a meme? Meme it up, Robute. I'm not a meme smith. We have to have, you got to be a skilled meme smith to really produce some high quality memes. I'm not there yet. All right, I'm working on it. Also says, really, Joe Biden, why would Americans want F15s? Because they're expensive as hell. And that's true. They are expensive. And have you seen gas prices? I mean, you fill your F15 up. It's a lot. It requires a lot of support from infrastructure, resources, and trained personnel. It requires many resources for F15s to be effective. You just can't have one. It's not practical. It's true, Robute. It's just not practical. Yeah, you really can't, most people can't. Heather says, can the DOJ appeal this judge's decision if he approves? Yes, they can. Trump's team responded. It's called sort of a special action. It's a separate process, but yeah, you can appeal individual rulings and actually we've seen that already in this case. Remember in the search warrant case, Three Girlies, we talked about one guy filed a request for the motion for the affidavit to be unsealed. He was denied. He already appealed that. Right? He just appealed it right away. I reject that decision. So he's appealing that decision up to a higher court. Trump's team responded to the DOJ. It's like ping pong. Former president team responds. Yeah, I'll have to take a look at that one. Thanks, Three Girlies. Former LEO says, would the public's need to know, open the federal courts to the citizens? If they want transparency to defuse the level of distrust, then they can give it to us. Not going to happen. Also, Ray KOK says, hey, buddy boy, it's pronounced Noem, like dome. Thank you, Ray K. I'm embarrassed now. I'm utterly humiliated. What was I saying? Noem? Kristi Noem? It's Noem, like gnome, idiot. All right, sorry about that, everybody. Okay, just fix that in your brain, like it never happened. Just fix it. Yeah. So I knew it was something. I couldn't think of it. That's late on my end. Hunter's crack dealers in the House says, how do we know that the whistleblower was not in cahoots with the DOJ or the FBI and planted documents before the raid? And believe me, I would not put it past them to do it if at all possible. Unless someone has oversight of these agencies, and I think we will never know. Yeah, you're right about that, Hunter's crack dealer. All your buddies at the FBI covering up for you. Former says, I think you might have cut that clip of Doocey a little short because it looks like Kilmeade was going to rebut Doocey's BS. By the way, is Biden's speech hate speech? I mean, he's labeling a whole group of people. AM says, vote, 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 just like Joe Rogan said. NY Renal MD says, what's worse, a politician who sloppily stores sensitive documents or a Justice Department trying a case in the media with this latest court filing? The DOJ court filing violates Garland's statement from his press conference and the traditional stance of the department for decades. Good to see you, NY. Yeah, good comment. I mean, honestly, he is speaking through his filings. He's just speaking like a disgruntled, I don't know, individual. I guess Attorney General. Martin, STFU FFS says, come and get them, Brandon. We have another one coming in from Thunder7. He says, Rob, Trump is waiting for the right moment to release the video showing the FBI goons throwing the papers to the ground to imply that Trump was not storing them securely. Yeah, and it's kind of interesting, right? Why would they ask him to turn the cameras off, demand that they turn the cameras off? Oh, because they don't want them to be seen twirling around in Melania's dresses. The Time magazine cover, very telling, with the swamp peering through the window at Trump sitting in the White House. Payback is going to be sweet. Says, by the way, and there it is, right? That's the photo. It looks like Trump sitting in there. Wow, is that really the photo that's there? That's amazing. Wow, that's the cover. That's pretty symbolic there, isn't it? It's like the FBI literally breaking into his home. They're all looking in there. All of the media, all of Joe Biden, Kamala, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Cory Booker, all peering on in there. Yeah. Interesting. I wonder if that's symbolic. I wonder if they put that there for a reason, right? If an FBI agent just said, let's put that one up front. All of us looking in, watching him. Wonder if they staged that. I would think they did. So, all right, we've got that one. Let's see what else. There was more to that. That's not what I wanted to do. All right, this one came in. It says, the Time magazine, very telling, swamp peering through the window. By the way, Rob, I hope you're not getting complacent with crimes taking place against Trump. The fake news keep blaming him when Garland and Biden are 100% to blame for their illegal persecution. I'm so friggin' outraged, but keeping it together, knowing that truth will come out soon. No, I don't think I'm getting complacent. I mean, I think that they are, they're just dumping all over the Constitution in many, many ways. And it's grotesque. Spawn Dog says, did this man just threaten Americans with F15s? Yeah. What the hell is wrong with him? He says, all the while keeping his backdoor business dealings with his son and his brother from being investigated. Is this man insane? It might be intentional insanity or he's just demented. I don't know. Robute says, the video the press representative is referring to is this attack on Titan parody, which clearly shows it's edited and not real. It's just these people being political hacks. Let's see what this is. So they said Paul Gosar was wanting to murder people. And yeah, so I can't see anything useful right there. But thank you for sharing that, Robute. If you want to see what that was, go check that out. Thunder7 says personal pronouns of the day is Papergate and Stagegate. Those are good. Those are new. Yeah. Those are new pronouns. I haven't seen those ones before. Papergate and Stagegate, Ultra Papergate, Ultra Stagegate, Ultra Extreme MAGA Stagegate. I love it. Yeah, a lot of possibilities there. We have Engineer says semi-fascist is the term Putin used to invade Ukraine. It was given the green light by Biden for a small incursion. Saying, way to tell us we are the enemy and alienate us from the outside assistance from the rest of the world when they come to kill us all. Oh, that sounds really horrendous, Engineer. Yeah, but it is about labeling your enemy and making sure that they are smeared as much as possible. NY says, make no mistake, Ann Coulter is wrong. Democrats are resigned to the fascism narrative. Trump has just hung around longer than most of the other losers and is backed in the past like Romney or McCain. Remember the narrative about Romney's dog on his car? Yeah. And the dog apparently, yeah, I mean, I remember a lot of narratives. And they all love him. Former says they found the plan for the D-Day invasion, marked top date, dated June 1944. Was Trump colluding with the Nazis? Oh my gosh. The Russians and the Nazis? He must have been, huh? AM says, if I use my Legos and build an F-15 and I am an armed extreme MAGA. Yeah, I mean, I got to counsel against that because the FBI, as you know, they will come and they will look for Lego sets. Okay, that's the Capitol building right there. Right there. That showed up in an official court document, in a warrant filing, because it scared the special agents. Be very careful about that, AM. They might arrest you. Emotional old cat lady says, doesn't look like it's MAGA that's violence. Eat S fascist. That's great. Oh, that's just outstanding. All right, so thank you for that, emotional old cat lady. Bonnie's in the house. We're doing a refresh over here to see if we've got anything else that has come in before we wrap it up for the day. Let's see what else we've got. Oh, yeah, several others. Let's see. Martin says... yeah, here we go. Martin said, Robute is here. He says, no violence. Don't let yourself get set up by the FBI like the fake Governor Whitmer kidnapping case. Would not surprise me that the attack on the Cincinnati FBI office is a Fed informant. Well, I think he's dead now, isn't he? So not going to learn more about that. Three Girlie says, last time I checked, the American Revolution was won with muskets against the greatest military power in the world at the time. Oh, and all the muskets, the cannonballs, they were privately owned because there was no standing army. And it's still illegal to buy tanks and any other form of military weaponry if you get the proper permits. It's still legal. You don't need an F-15 in order to be successful in taking down a world power. Biden is an idiot. Yeah, I mean, yes, obviously, right? I mean, it's just taunting is all it is. He's insane to think that's the case. I mean, if they really think that, then why don't they just let us all have guns? Why are they so adamant on removing guns? Because they know that's the final piece of the puzzle. Good to see you, Three Girlies. Martin says, did you hear WAPO's Eric Wimple talking about the FBI fraud on Trump and O'Keefe? No, I did not, but I will take a look at that. Thank you for sharing that, Martin. Hunter's Crack Dealer says, not to give you a hard time, Rob, but I'm noticing some background hiss, a chirping sound, almost like very fast crickets during the stream. I don't know if I can hear it. All right, I'll listen to the audio after the show. Maybe there's something going on there. Let me know if you're hearing that, chat. C. Reed says, if you need the new app for Apple Watches so you can stay on top of it, Biden's New World. Oh, 1945. Yeah, 1945 is what that says. Yeah, looks appropriate. Happy Hour says, the great Rush Limbaugh used to say that you should never be embarrassed by mispronouncing something. It just means you read a lot. No, that's a good thing to know. I was a big Rush fan. I sort of miss Rush. I really wish that he were sort of around still. I kind of miss his takes on a lot of stuff. Hunter's Crack Dealer says, also, how do we know that these classified documents came from Trump? And how do we even know that these are even legitimate documents and not fabricated? I can make some that look exactly the same. Dickie Seamus says he can hear it. Yeah. Okay, well, I'll have to listen to it. Robute says, wow, somehow the FBI Gestapo releases a photo with supposedly classified documents thrown all over the place. This is totally not the FBI throwing documents to the ground. Here's another one. Oh, yeah. Epstein. Oh, yeah. Here's a good one. Epstein's flight log is redacted. Ashley Biden's diary redacted. Obama's birth certificate's redacted there. Hillary Clinton, the Beach Blit documents. Obama collusion with the FBI. Peter Pedo is in there. the crime Biden's family's foreign dealings. The list goes on and on over there from Facts Matter. Thank you, Facts Matter, for that. All right, one more final refresh before we wrap it up for the day, my friends. And the last one came in from Lynette. Says, I like your jokes about the treasonous feds and bureaucrats. Maybe that's what complacent means. Got to fight and laugh like the Babylon Bee. Oh, yeah, so here's the Babylon Bee. FBI insists the raid on Melania's closet was justified while wearing women's clothes. That's just outstanding. They are just the best. They're really funny. Yeah, that FBI agent, he looks like he's a very special agent. You can see that. Look at him. Pretty muscular, works out a lot. Full of intelligence. Look at that gaping jaw, just kind of like, yeah. That's who's in charge of our country. The Babylon Bee. Amazing. Okay, so thank you for that, Lynette. What a great way to end the show with an outstanding comment and an outstanding post. And that, my friends, I think is it for us for the day. We are going to leave it right there at that. I want to thank everybody who was a part of the show. We covered a lot of ground today, and I want to thank everybody who's chatting away over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. I'm grateful for your support. Shout out to JC the Music Man. He says, Rob, hey, let's test this real fast. Okay, so hey, Hunter's Crack Dealer, if you're still there, I'm going to turn on my noise gate, and like right now, okay, so actually we can troubleshoot some of this. Right now, the air conditioning is on, so there is a fan noise. I can barely hear a fan, maybe. I do hear some cricket sounds now, a little bit, maybe in my ear. Let's try this. Did that stop it? Yeah, it did, didn't it? I think it did. All right, so what I did there, folks, just so you can see how this works, is I have a noise gate. This is some of the technical stuff that I have to sort of, rummage around through. All right, so this is with, okay, so tell me if gate is better, gate or no gate. Okay, so this is the gate that's on. I'm talking with the gate on. Now we're going to take the gate off and let's listen. Okay, now the gate is off, right? So now you're hearing some background noise a little bit. So now the gate is off. Tell me how it sounds. Zach Nichols is turning his headphones on. Now I'm turning the gate back on. Gate is on. The noise gate is on, and you can see that there. And I'll have to listen to it. I gotta put on the full better without the gate, it says Janice. So the gate is on right now. Now the gate is off. You get a little bit more background noise. And so for those of you in the audio world, you can see what's happening. When I turn the gate on, so like watch, I'll stop speaking. Watch this bar right here. You'll see it's picking up background noise. Watch. Okay, watch. Now you see those bars, those green bars? Now when I turn the gate on and I stop talking, watch. Actually, that didn't solve anything. That means my gate levels are probably too high. All right, so now I'll deal with this later. We got to finish the show. But you can see, man, it's complicated stuff. All right, so let me turn the gate back off so that we can have the rest of the show completed. Wrong gate, somebody's saying. All right, Gio's out. I'm leaving. People are leaving. The chat, everybody's bailing out. Nobody wants to see the audio levels. And so we'll wrap it up right now, my friends. Thank you to everybody who's chatting away over on watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Zach Nichols, Volume 100, says, I can hear it. So thank you for joining over on YouTube, for hitting the join button and joining up. Shout outs to Kevlar, Curtis Bartle, Jenny B, Shane Souza, Michael Cleffy's all in the house. Jenny, I see all of them here. Thank you for subscribing, my friends. Thank you for hitting that like button before you head on out of here. I'd love it if we could get over 2,000 views before we wrap the show up. Also, we got a new Hunter Biden GIF for the YouTube members. And he's saying there, I really didn't know, right, is what he's saying. So we've got that one. We've got the Binger Full Metal Jacket GIF from the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, and those are available for our members. I also am a criminal defense lawyer over at the R&R Law Group, where we help good people charged with crimes. We're located in Scottsdale, Arizona. We offer free case evaluations for anybody charged with a crime, any type of trouble that you're in the state of Arizona. If you're here for a bachelorette party, or if you're here to visit the Grand Canyon, you get a criminal speeding ticket, or something happens, right? You get into an argument, you break a plate, and your neighbor next door calls you and calls the police on you and says there's violence going on. Happens all the time. We help good people, and we make sure that we hold the government to their burden, and we defend our clients, maintaining their presumption of innocence. We're grateful for your referrals. We offer free case evaluations, 480-787-0394, and we're grateful for your support. It allows our team to do what we do best, and we love the work that we do. We couldn't do it without you. So I want to also say thank you to the mods who modded down the fort for us. Big thank yous over to Vienticus, to K Bean, to Just Cows. Shout out to Lean in the house, along with Playin' Hooky, Ronnie Cole, Shout out to my friends Zulu and Geo, as well as Lava, Java, Lava. Our big spotlight supporters, as usual, are Chris Romero, David B3, Dr. EMB in the house, and go check out John over at qsimple.com. Very grateful for all of your spotlight support love. Little extra monetary support for the program. And of course, I like to share some screen real estate with our biggest supporters. And so I want to thank everybody who was a part of the show. You know, the show is sort of, well, it's better. It's a live stream, so it's more fun when we do it together. And your comments, of course, add that extra spice that really make it worth all the while. And so I'm grateful for all of you for being a part of the program. We are going to leave it there today. We're going to come back tomorrow and do it all again. I hope you have a tremendous evening. You sleep very well. I'll play around with those audio levels, and I'll look forward to seeing you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye, my friends.